Good afternoon. I'm just going to get mic'd up for the Secretary of State's live feed. Great. And how's the, can you see? Jana, can you see? Good afternoon. I'm Secretary of State Shenna Bellows. Thank you for joining me today. Today is an exciting day. Absentee voting has begun here in our state, just as it always does 30 days prior to Election Day. Mainers can be very proud of our safe and secure elections. We consistently rank at the top of the nation in voter participation, and I'm confident we'll see that again this year with the November referendum election. This afternoon, I'm going to walk through the checks and balances that safeguard our elections every step of the way. I'm going to explain the process of production and distribution of absentee ballots and absentee ballot return envelopes. I'm going to detail the process of absentee voting and how every voter can be confident that their vote will count and that bad actors cannot dilute their vote. We're going to share more about the suspicious events that came to light last week, although that is an ongoing law enforcement investigation. I will share facts that the Elections Division has, but I cannot share details of the law enforcement investigation. I have three messages, one for voters, one for Maine's hardworking election officials at every level, and one for any bad actor involved. To voters, rest assured, voting is underway and the checks and balances worked to protect the integrity of your vote. To the hardworking Maine election officials in the Department of Secretary of State Elections Division and in our municipalities, thank you. I know many of you worked overtime to ensure the successful delivery and receipt of ballots so that absentee voting could start successfully today. You are the unsung heroes of American elections. To any bad actor involved, you will be caught and you will be punished. You obviously didn't understand the checks and balances in Maine elections if you thought you could stop absentee voting or shake our faith in fair and free elections. Now, to begin with the checks and balances in Maine elections. Checks and balances in Maine elections begin with the chain of custody protections in the process of production and distribution of absentee ballot envelopes and absentee ballots to the 487 cities and towns that administer elections in Maine. The system of printing and distributing ballots to Maine municipalities, as well as the process for casting a vote, has been used for years under many secretaries of state. That system has worked well for decades, and it continues to work today. So just to explain a few of those processes, because we've received many questions about how elections work over the last few days, and I want to make sure that you have the information that you need on that process. Printing. Maine ballots are printed and packaged by a Maine printing company contracted by the Elections Division. In accordance with protocol and chain of custody protections, the boxes of ballots are sealed and marked clearly as ballots at the printer with security tape and markings to ensure that the ballots are handled appropriately at every step of the process and that the chain of custody is maintained. Shipping. The packages are shipped directly from the printer using both the U.S. Postal Service and UPS. Those packages include tracking information so that all parties can track the status of packages of ballots from the printer through shipping to the municipal clerks. A signature is required by the appropriate municipal official upon receipt at the cities and towns. The clerk must complete a ballot receipt that they return to the Department of Secretary of State Elections Division. In summary, all absentee ballots are tracked carefully from the printer through the verified carrier to the municipalities. Absentee ballot envelopes, the return envelopes, are printed by a different printing company and shipped separately at a separate time via UPS with their own individual tracking numbers. This way, envelopes and ballots cannot be mixed in shipment and are received by each municipality completely separately. So that is the process of production and distribution of absentee ballot return envelopes and absentee ballots. Now, I will say, even if the most enterprising criminal were able to fabricate Maine ballots or Maine absentee ballot envelopes, or if that chain of custody were broken, our elections would remain free, safe, and secure because of the checks and balances in absentee voting itself. Remember, for an absentee ballot, a voter must make a specific request. That must be a lawful registered voter. They can make that request in a number of ways. Many voters make it through the online absentee ballot request system. Every request from a registered voter in Maine is tracked in the central voter registration system. That allows for tracking by clerks, by the elections division, by the voter themselves with our online absentee ballot tracking portal, and by campaigns and political parties, because the Secretary of State every week, and then more regularly as the election approaches, uploads a file with all absentee ballot requests publicly. When the clerk issues a ballot, as they are doing all over the state today, they enter that into the central voter registration system so that the voter can see that the ballot has been mailed to them, so the parties can see ballots have been mailed out and to whom. Then when the voter receives that absentee ballot and they receive an official absentee ballot return envelope that has their information on it, placed on that envelope by the clerk, they must not only complete the ballot, but they must seal it in the official absentee ballot return envelope that has their information on it, and they must sign it. So when it is returned to the clerk marks it as returned in the central voter registration system. Again, the voter can see that it has been received by the clerk. If there is no signature, if it is not in an official absentee ballot return envelope and signed by the voter, then it must be rejected, and that gets recorded as well. So absentee ballot envelopes are not opened by the clerks in a back room somewhere in small towns. They are safeguarded securely until official absentee ballot processing, which under Maine law can happen up to 7 days prior to Election Day. It's a public process. In fact, the times at which absentee ballot processing is going to take place by the clerks is currently posted on our website. And that process is open to all campaigns, all political parties, partisan and nonpartisan observers alike. So those are the processes that safeguard absentee voting itself. In summary, the process of printing and shipping absentee ballots contains numerous safeguards to protect the chain of custody, and absentee voting has many more safeguards to ensure that a ballot can only be voted if it is associated with a legal registered voter and a valid absentee ballot request. Absentee ballots are tracked by clerks in the central voter registration system, by voters in the online absentee ballot portal, and by political parties and campaigns through the data request to the Secretary of State's office that we post on our website. Absentee voting is an open and transparent public process with observers from all sides having the opportunity to observe. And this entire detailed process was established to ensure safe and secure elections in which all Maine citizens can feel confident. Any ballots that move outside of the chain of custody cannot be used for voting, and only one vote per registered voter will ever be counted. So that's the process of absentee voting. That's what's happening all across Maine today, and that's what election officials love, is making voting accessible and secure to the voters of our state. I will now turn to the events that came to light last week. And I think it is important to recognize that this is an ongoing law enforcement investigation. Information I am sharing is not information received from law enforcement, but rather held at the Elections Division. But we are being very careful not to compromise an ongoing investigation. So, as has been reported, allegedly last week, 250 Maine absentee ballots were allegedly delivered to an unnamed individual in Newburgh, Maine, in her Amazon delivery box, obviously outside of the appropriate chain of custody. As soon as we became aware of that situation, I directed my Secretary of State's Law Enforcement Division to investigate. That division is working closely in collaboration with the Maine Office of Attorney General, with the support of Maine State Police, and in collaboration with federal law enforcement partners, including the Federal Bureau of Investigation and the U.S. Postal Service investigation team, to determine what happened. We have received regular updates on the progress of the investigation. I have full confidence that law enforcement will determine who is responsible, and any bad actor will be held accountable. We will not stop until we have answers. Again, I am limited in what I can share, but I do want to share some facts. On Tuesday, the city of Ellsworth received 2 boxes of absentee ballots, as planned. One of those boxes did not contain 5 packets of ballots totaling 250 ballots. They were missing. The Ellsworth clerk's office did exactly what we always instruct clerks to do. They notified the Elections Division of the missing ballots, initiating protocols that the Election Division always follows to reach out to our partners, including the printer and authorized carrier, to investigate what happened. Also on Tuesday, as publicly reported, an unnamed woman in Newburgh, Maine, allegedly received 5 packets of Maine absentee ballots in an Amazon box. The unnamed woman's legislator and a conservative blogger were contacted and notified of events, but at no point on Tuesday did anyone in Newburgh contact the Secretary of State's Elections Division or law enforcement. A conservative blogger emailed a staff person at the Secretary of State's office at 1:31 a.m. on Wednesday, noting that he would post online immediately. The Newburgh Town Office called the Elections Division at 8 a.m. promptly on Wednesday morning to report the ballots received. Secretary of State detectives went immediately to Newburgh, and ballots were secured. There are 2 things that I want to share with Mainers. All Maine absentee ballots have been carefully tracked. It is true that the number of ballots missing in Ellsworth corresponds to the number of ballots received in Newburgh. Ellsworth and Newburgh are 40 miles apart. At this point, there are 4 packages within the U.S. Postal Service system that have not yet arrived to small Maine towns to which they have been directed, but those particular very tiny towns do not have office hours until later in the week. We are working closely with the U.S. Postal Service to ensure that those 4 packages arrive on time. All other Maine towns have now received their expected ballot shipments. So that is really important for voters to recognize. All Maine towns have received their expected ballot shipments. So the process is safe and secure. Additionally, late Friday evening, our Elections Division was notified by a private organization that they believed that they were in possession of absentee return envelopes from Maine. This was an out-of-state private organization. I directed law enforcement to expand the investigation to include the delivery of absentee ballot return envelopes. However, today we can confirm that all Maine towns have received appropriate shipments of absentee return envelopes as planned. So the good news in all of this is that the system of checks and balances worked. Whatever happened last week, and we will find out what happened, will not impact our election. Law enforcement will find those responsible. Any bad actor involved will be punished. We are in a different world than we were just a few years ago. Our elections, and indeed our democracy, are under attack in new and different ways all of the time. Last year, it was white powder mailings and swatting of polling sites, and yet Maine elections prevailed. We had more people turn out than ever before in our history. This year, it seems that there may have been attempts to interrupt the distribution of ballots and ballot materials, but we are stronger and better than anyone who tries to do our elections harm. Time and time again, election officials and law enforcement rise to meet the challenges we face. I'm proud of the hardworking elections staff, led by the nation's longest-serving elections director, Deputy Secretary Julie Flynn. I'm proud of the Maine city, town, and clerks who work tirelessly on the front lines of our democracy to run our elections. I'm grateful to our law enforcement partners at every level who are dedicated to finding the truth and running down anyone who would do us harm. And I'm proud of the Maine people who time and time again volunteer and vote to make us one of the best states in the nation in voter participation. Election officials are the world's best contingency planners. We will adapt, as we always do, to stay one step ahead of the bad actors who seek to interfere with our elections. Maine elections are free, safe, and secure, and I have confidence that this November we will once again lead the nation in safe and secure elections. Thank you very much, and I'm happy to take questions, recognizing, however, that I'm limited by what I can speak to, because I can speak to the work of the elections division on the civil side of this work, and our job is to ensure the safe and secure distribution of ballot and ballot materials. So I expect that there may be many questions, to which I will have to say there is an ongoing law enforcement investigation, and I cannot speak to that. But with that, I'm happy to take a few questions from members of the press. I am not going to take questions from bloggers or legislators at this time.
The ballots, I know there's a serial number on these ballots. Can you confirm that the ballots that were missing from the Ellsworth City Hall were the ones that were delivered to a woman in Newburgh?
There's an ongoing investigation, and I cannot speak to details at that time.
And I do have a related follow-up, I'm sorry, but so were the ballots that were not delivered to Ellsworth, was their package open and they were missing, or was there an entire package?
There's an ongoing investigation, and I can't speak to the details at this time. What I can speak to is that law enforcement is chasing down every thread, turning over every stone in this investigation.
And if the Attorney General's office makes policing their law enforcement or one together?
The Secretary of State's Law Enforcement Division is leading this investigation, and we are very grateful for collaboration with all of our law enforcement partners.
You seem to say, Shenna, that there could have been an attempt to find out what you call bad actor to do this. I mean, is that what you're saying in this press conference?
So there is an ongoing investigation, and what I am saying, I have three messages. One, to voters, the checks and balances worked. Voting started today, and we can be assured that it is free, safe, and secure. All of our towns have the ballots they need, and the absentee ballot return envelopes that they need, and the system of checks and balances is working. I can't put a finer point on who's involved because of the ongoing investigation. I have a lot of confidence in law enforcement and in their investigatory abilities, so I think there will be answers. I also have a lot of confidence in the chain of custody protections. Each of these packages had a tracking number, and U.S. Postal Service and UPS are longstanding carriers, so I have confidence that we will be able to identify, that law enforcement will be able to uncover every stone and identify exactly what happened. We won't stop until we have answers.
Has this led you to reconsider the process of printing and distributing ballots? I mean, for example, we have the Absentee police to go and get memory sticks for recounts and rank choice counts. Is this a potential vulnerability?
So I think the question is whether this has caused us to reconsider the distribution process. I think that what we are seeing in Maine is that, let me rephrase. Those checks and balances in our production and distribution of ballots have been in place for a long time. Clearly, there was an interruption in the process this time. So we will certainly do an after action to evaluate how we can safeguard against any bad actor who seeks to interrupt that chain of custody. What that looks like, I can't speak to. Ellsworth has all of the ballots that they need. And absentee voting started today. Newburgh received all of the ballots that they needed. And absentee ballot voting has started there as well. There was an ongoing law enforcement investigation, and I am certainly not a veteran of law enforcement investigations, but we have been very careful not to interfere with the investigation at any point. We want to make sure that it is thoroughly and properly investigated. I'm speaking to you today in part because today is the first day of absentee voting. So on the first day of absentee voting, every year we hold a media availability to walk through the process, to remind voters that they can vote right now. They can request an absentee ballot with an absentee ballot application that they can download from our website and mail to their municipal clerk. They can do so in our online absentee ballot request portal. They can go in person and vote during normal office hours at the clerk's office all through the next month until close of business on the Thursday prior to Election Day. They can send their husband or wife or other immediate family member to go pick up a ballot for them. If they're a registered voter, they can request that absentee ballot through a phone call request to the clerk as well. So we want voters to know that every town has the ballots that they needed, that absentee voting has started successfully, and that the checks and balances are in place to safeguard the election.
When did the FBI get involved in this? Was it at your request? Was it at their request?
I can't speak to the details of the law enforcement investigation. What I can speak to is it is standard practice by the Secretary of State Division of Enforcement Services to reach out to our partners immediately when we have an investigation that, any investigation.
Do you have any CIA investigation?
I don't, no.
Has the state been in touch with Amazon, UPS, or the recipient of the package, and if so, what is it?
So I can't speak to the details of the investigation, but what I can say is the state has very strong relationships with all of our partners. We are very grateful to our printers and our partners at the U.S. Postal Service and UPS, with whom we have a long-standing and well-established relationship in the successful production and distribution of ballots every year. These are not new procedures. They are not new protocols. These are well-established by over decades via statute and under various secretaries of state.
What information leads you to believe that this wasn't an accidental mix-up with the shipping?
So is there any other question from any other member of the press? Jackie. Is there a question from the member of the press? Can you say that again?
The ballots that Ellsworth did receive in order to have enough ballots, were these replacement ballots with different serial numbers, or were these the ones that were in the package?
Oh, so if ballots are removed from the chain of custody, they are no longer utilized. If those, in fact, ballots that were allegedly received by an individual in Newburgh were in fact ballots, they would not be used in the election. So once ballots are removed from the chain of custody or envelopes are removed from the chain of custody, they are no longer usable. And so the ballots that Ellsworth received to replace the 250 ballots that they did not receive last week were legitimate ballots issued by the printer and delivered to Ellsworth using a chain of custody. I can't speak to the investigation, and I can't speak to who may have been involved. I don't know that, right? That is law enforcement's jurisdiction. I'm saying to any bad actor who may have been involved, they will be caught and they will be punished. I didn't state the name of the printer. Yes, I'm not going to share that at this time. And law enforcement has asked me not to share too many details as to not compromise the investigation. So I've shared the information that I can share, and I really appreciate everyone coming out today. I'm happy to talk with members of the Maine press one-on-one following this conclusion of the press conference. Again, what I want to say to voters is Mainers should be so proud. Our elections are free, safe, and secure. We consistently lead the nation in elections. We consistently rank in the top 3. Indeed, in 2022, we were number 1 in the nation in voter turnout. In 2024, more Mainers cast a ballot than ever before in our history, and we were number 3 in the nation in voter turnout. So voting starts today. We want all Maine citizens to know that they have the opportunity to register to vote, to cast their ballot now in this 30-day window prior to Election Day or on Election Day, and that their vote will be counted, that our elections are transparent, that our processes are thorough and safe. Thank you very much. So like I said, I'm happy to talk to members of the Maine press.